Well, thank you everyone for giving me the opportunity to speak today. Very, very grateful indeed to everything HIT Labs has done to help us in the past. Long-term support for many years, but the most exciting one was probably a trial when I rang up HIT Labs and said, we've got to produce data in 20 days for NATO Innovation Final. Can you do it? And without much of a hesitation, it was like, yep, and they did. So thank you to HIT Labs. Thank you everyone for the time today. One of the questions that was asked of the previous speaker was, what do you think the promise of digital health is? And for me, that's a really simple answer. It is the use of technology to leverage scarce resources. No area within healthcare is that more critical than in mental health and pain relief, where the absence of human resources is such an incredibly large bottleneck. As the introduction, thank you for the kind introduction. As that alluded to, my journey was started 1992. I had to drive a Jeep off a bridge in the Yemen, near the capital Sana'a, and that resulted in a spinal cord injury, traumatic brain injury, PTSD, and a nerve damage pain problem that was so severe I was given a 5-year life expectancy. I went through all the standard of care. Nothing worked, so I had to come up with my own solution, which ended up being an audio-visual neuromodulation. And this is the current version of the device. And the user puts it on, turns it on, is getting pulses of light, pulses of sound, and that is generating very specific frequency patterns in the brain for very predictable and useful outcomes. So the most important thing to understand about where this technology is leveraged is basically chronic diseases where you have a central sensitization to pain or increased sensitization to all stimulus. So our three main areas of focus are neuropathic pain, 20 million Americans. That includes everything from neuropathic pain from diabetes, trigeminal neuralgia, through chemotherapy, PTSD, which is obviously an incredibly important area, and fibromyalgia, which we basically regard as the long-term effects of early or prior PTSD. So I'm going to now play a video to show you some of the background.
I was in the Yemen exploring. I was driving a Jeep down a road and I had a split-second choice of whether to have a head-on collision next to a petrol truck or go off a bridge. And in that split second, decided to go off the bridge. And I was dead. I was clinically dead for 8 minutes. I slipped into a coma for 6 weeks. Yeah, when I came out of my coma and I was in such an incredibly high level of pain, it was so high that I was actually lucidly dreaming and aware that I was in pain even when I was asleep. That level of pain, it stops all quality of life. I was in hospital for 14 months total. The doctor gave me basically a 5-year life expectancy with the level of pain I had. It's a battle for daily survival to get through each day that finding any relief becomes a mission. What helped me in hospital was getting my lucky break of my aha moment. And that came from watching a particular movie, and what was so amazing about the movie was that it was alternately good and bad the whole way through from my perspective. So the movie had me very engaged and then not engaged, and then engaged and then not engaged. And that had the effect of putting my brain in and out of what we would now call a flow state. And at the end of the movie, the thought went through my head was, holy shit, that change of consciousness is a way of lowering pain. What happened was the film made me feel in a way that I used to when I was skiing, and I realized that was what was making me feel less pain. And then I found research trying to get pulse light to improve speed reading. And in my mind, speed reading and skiing have very similar things going on in the brain. And that's when I realized that maybe I could use pulse light to change patterns in my brain to lower my pain levels. The Sun device is a headset. And when you put it on, you close your eyes and you're seeing pulses of light through closed eyes and hearing pulses of sound. And that goes through a sequence of patterns that makes you feel very rapidly more relaxed. Right now, we are able to make claims around wellness and improved sleep. And we are aiming for FDA approval first in fibromyalgia, then in neuropathic pain, then in PTSD.
So I'm going to continue, and please message me if you can't hear me. Yes, again, so how this works. There are very, the most similar thing that is actually in use so far is transcranial magnetic stimulation, where you're using a magnet in a clinic to get the brain to produce particular frequencies for a particular effect. If you think about it, this device is basically an at-home version of that, with the same results, but being able to give it to everyone at home. That is essentially what we're achieving. Clinical data-wise, because this sounds too good to be true, when you have things that have essentially no side effects or only positive side effects, and you're equaling drug outcomes, well, what's the proof? So neuropathic pain, obviously, which is the core of where I started. We've now finished pivotal at Mount Sinai. We smashed everything that we set out to solve on neuropathic pain, and very specifically also within that neuropathic burning pain. So we have now submitted to the FDA to add neuropathic burning pain to our existing fibromyalgia breakthrough designation. We have also just completed a pilot that was paid for by CDMRP via military operational medicine, so DoD, and it was carried out in conjunction with the VA at the Medical University of South Carolina. We got results equivalent to 12 weeks of either prolonged exposure or cognitive processing therapy with a simple device that was sent to someone. Now, within the VA, the gold standard is prolonged exposure, but only 15% of people with PTSD within the VA system actually get the treatment because of the lack of available mental health practitioners. So again, this is the classic example of where you can use technology to leverage existing resources. So the aim here is that the Sana device will be sent out to people who are on waiting lists for this kind of care and reduce either the need for that care or reduce the time it takes to actually deliver that care when it's available. So we're in that multimodal delivery of care ecosystem. Now, within PTSD, we also had very large results on anxiety and depression. So they will be future areas we go into. And then comparing us to the existing drugs that are available. So Lyrica is a drug of choice in neuropathic pain and in fibromyalgia. We have an effect size that is approximately 5 times the effect size of Lyrica. And the lack of side effects means that after 2 years, the long-term users of the device carried on using it in 80% of the time. Whereas with Lyrica, that is about 10% is the answer for that one. So where we are now overall is we have 1 breakthrough designation granted on fibromyalgia. We have 2 pending on PTSD and neuropathic pain, which we should hear about in the first or second week of January. And we already have the data to submit for Mount Sinai for neuropathic pain for the de novo, which we then should have at the end of Q2 in 2024. And then that will be followed by self-predicated 510Ks for PTSD and fibromyalgia. We also have very large backing from the DoD in other areas. Adjustment disorder is one they've just funded. and pain and sleep within healthcare practitioners, so looking after people who are delivering care. So here is the even more shameless plug. We are in the middle of a Series A extension round, which is a safe note. 2 million rounds. We're actually now up to 1.5 committed. We have about 500K available. This is to give us enough runway to get through that first or second FDA approval, full approval, so that we can then leverage breakthrough designation to get coding and coverage with CMS towards the end of next year. So thank you everyone for the time. If you scan the QR code, that will link me to my LinkedIn. I just want to say again, thank you to everyone who's helped. And for me, what's currently going on in Israel and Gaza and the West Bank, and the additional trauma being felt by all parties, to me that is a very important point with digital health, because again, mental health is an area where we can, in theory, leverage the existing resources to much greater effect with existing technologies like ours. Back in 2004, there was a school shooting and a school siege in Beslan. It was Chechen rebels that overtook it in part of southern Russia. I was 100 miles away in Tbilisi at the time. And I remember thinking, wow, that's 150 kids that have been killed by this terrorist incident. And there are another 150 that have been injured and psychologically damaged. And yet there will be no mental health care provision provided because it's just too expensive on a per person basis. But what if you could send one mental health professional with a suitcase full of devices, and then hopefully apps and tablets and etc. as well, and that one person then can deliver 10 times the amount of care that they can currently deliver. That is the aim that we're aiming for in these kind of situations. And at the moment, we're under consideration to be taken to Israel for this exact purpose. So anyway, so very much look forward to connecting with anyone who wants to join us on our mission. We're trying to raise the very end of that safe note round. And we're also looking for the partners for where we can pilot in PTSD, neuropathic pain, and fibromyalgia, both within the VA and Medicare, Medicaid systems. Those are our three big areas right now. So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate everything that you're doing there at HIT Labs, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today.